Many years ago, before television was invented, many years ago in the Highlands of Scotland, there was a minister by the name of Reverend Alec MacLeod, and people came from all over to hear him preach. And he liked to talk about miserable sinners, wretched sinners who were all going to hell. You heard it most Sundays. And one Sunday it went something like this. You're all miserable sinners, wretched sinners, and you're destined for hell. And it's no use waiting till you die and you go there and you're sent to hell, and then saying, "Oh Lord, we didn't ken, meaning we didn't know this was going to happen. Because he says the good Lord in his infinite mercy will look down from his throne above and say, well, you ken new. One Sunday, a villager by the name of Donald MacDonald decided to go to church. And he put on his good suit, put brill cream in his hair. Remember when the men used to wear brill cream? Parted his hair. And he discovered in his pocket his broken dentures. He had meant to get them repaired, but it slipped his mind. Anyhow, he took himself off to church. Everybody liked to get there a bit early to get a seat. And you've got to remember, at these times, there weren't so many diversions. There wasn't the television or the health clubs and so forth. And everybody didn't live as long as people expect to live today. And of course, the minister was in fine fettle again, and he was going on about his favourite topic. And he was telling them, there'll be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth when you get to hell. And Donald MacDonald was sitting in the front pew, and the minister looked down and he saw him, and Donald MacDonald having no teeth, he was grinning a big gummy smile, and the minister looked over and he said, and as for you, Donald MacDonald, teeth will be provided. Now, it's clear why people went to church at that time. There weren't so many diversions. They were terrified of what was going to happen in the afterlife. And so they went off to church. Today, things have changed dramatically. And I don't know if some of you saw an article in The Age on Monday. It was written by a woman, Charlotte Mortlock, who talked about how going to the dog park is like church, but better. And she talks about there's so many similarities. She says you take your dog to the dog park and there you meet people. So you've got community. You've got connection as people talk about their dogs. You've got the ritual of every day having to take your dog to the park. And she says you've got puppy love. And of course, there's a lot of substitutions we've seen over the years. We've seen, well, an obvious one, the car. We've seen shopping malls. We've seen sport, health clubs. So many diversions that people didn't have in the past. And so today, I'd like us to reflect on why we bother with church. I'm sure you've all been asked at one time or another, why do you bother with church? Well, why do you turn up here on a Sunday? And when we're confronted with this question, it can sometimes be challenging to put into words what is simply, after all, a significant part of who we are. Is it really, as it may appear to many people, a waste of a good Sunday morning when perhaps we could have a sleep in, mow the lawn, wash the car, read the newspaper. I mean, after all, why spend an hour or so doing and saying much the same things week after week, month after month, year after year, and even the sermons obtain their same inspiration from the same 3-year cycle of the lectionary? Aren't there more interesting and worthwhile pursuits? Well, obviously, those who do come to church believe that coming to church helps them. But how exactly does worship help? Well, the short answer to that question is that people believe worship strengthens, repairs, and refocuses their life. It strengthens, repairs, and refocuses their lives. And the long answer is that worship benefits people in at least 10 ways. 10 ways. And today I would briefly like to touch on each of these 10 ways. Firstly, worship dispels loneliness. It helps to erase the feeling of disconnectedness that mental health professionals say is one of the most universally reported stresses of society today. Secondly, worship brings hope. Research indicates that public worship attendance correlates with life satisfaction, which is surely related to worship's ability to give people a different perspective in life. Worship helps us to see beyond the wall of circumstances which restricts our vision. And thirdly, worship counters self-centeredness. One of the best ways to define the biblical word sin is self-centeredness, which leads inevitably to the internal conviction that I am the center of the universe. But by attending worship, we move beyond that, and God, rather than self, becomes the focus. And fourthly, worship reminds us of important values, values which we tend to forget, values such as the importance of loving people rather than things, the importance of forgiving rather than resenting, and the importance of serving rather than seeking only to be served. And fifthly, worship strengthens courage. Someone flying over the North Atlantic noted that small icebergs move in one direction while the large icebergs move in the opposite direction. And this happened because the surface winds drive the small ones, but the deep currents move the huge ones. Worship, by keeping us in touch with the deep currents, often help us move against life's surface winds. Sixth, worship gives us the opportunity to express thanksgiving. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow, has retained its popularity as a worship response because it's amongst the most basic of human instincts. Thanksgiving in worship is a powerful antidote to the delusion of self-sufficiency. And seventh, worship brings us a sense of forgiveness. People may recognize their self-centeredness, but they often can't get on the other side. They can't get on the other side of it by themselves. Worship moves us beyond our limited ability to let go of dangerous fixations on our own shortcomings and failures. And eighth, worship renews our faith. Studies indicate that within 7 days, humans forget much of what they learn, and perhaps that's why the Bible suggests that we worship every 7 days. We're nearly at the end, by the way. Ninth, worship is a transcendent experience, something that gets us out of ourselves, which helps us become transformed from the way we are to the way that we can be. Often the insight we require for taking the next step is found within the experience of worship. And finally, the 10th point, worship is a highly organized form of corporate prayer which brings positive change to people. Isaac Newton's first law of motion states that a body tends to keep in motion when it is in motion, and it tends to stay at rest when it is at rest, unless acted upon by some external force. And that law of physics also applies to humanity. In other words, we tend to continue in whatever state we are in until we are influenced by forces outside ourselves. So, why do we come to church? We come to church because worship strengthens, repairs, and refocuses our life. It strengthens, repairs, and refocuses our lives. We don't come to church because we think we're better than other people. We come to church because we believe worship helps make flawed people like you and I good, and good people better.